Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Porter, and I'm the Director of Healthy Green Schools and Colleges. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Before we get started, I want to just take a moment to invite everyone to maybe take a deep breath and just have a quiet moment in acknowledgement of the tragedy that unfolded in Maine over the last 24 hours or so. It's hard to find words to talk about that, but I appreciate that in the midst of what's going on, that you're taking time to be with us today, and also just want to create a little space for us to all have a moment of silence on that. Thank you. So again, welcome. I'm Sarah Porter. I'm the director of the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program. So thrilled to have you join us today. This webinar is where we will be talking about successfully implementing an indoor air quality monitoring program. We've got 90 minutes scheduled for today's webinar, and during that time, I'm going to give you an overview of the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program and its various elements, focusing specifically on the standard and criteria related to IAQ monitoring. After that, I'm going to give you a broad strokes overview of IAQ monitoring and why it's important, some considerations for choosing the right technology for your program, and also considerations as you select different buildings and spaces to monitor. After that, we'll get to the really good stuff. I will introduce you to 3 K-12 school facilities professionals who are going to talk us through their experiences and their process for integrating IAQ monitoring into their facilities maintenance and management programs. We're going to use a good portion of our time together today in a Q&A session with those folks. So definitely feel free to use the Q&A feature at any time during the presentation to submit questions, and we will do our best to get to all of them. So let's get started. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors. Healthy Green Schools and Colleges is supported by these generous sponsors, all of whom have offerings that help school districts and higher education institutions in their commitments towards health and sustainability. And this programming and our program year-round would not be possible without their support. So thank you very much. So if you're not familiar, Healthy Green Schools and Colleges is a partnership between Healthy Schools Campaign and Green Seal, 2 nonprofit organizations that both do very different things, but are both very focused on health and sustainability. Healthy Schools Campaign is an organization based in Chicago that does work across the country, is focused really on looking at all of the different elements that go into supporting healthy school environments so that students can learn and thrive. Green Seal is an organization that creates standards and certifications for cleaning products, tools, and equipment, thereby helping accelerate the use of safer products across the board. So our 2 organizations together put on the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program. We got together a couple of years ago and embarked upon a process of really digging in with school facility directors across the country to build a program that would really help bring resources and support to school facility professionals in their efforts around health and sustainability. So let me tell you a little bit about the program. You can see here that the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard is the centerpiece of our program. It is a science-based standard for healthy, sustainable facility management programs that prioritizes low and no-cost measures to improving indoor air quality in schools. It covers sort of all the things that go that fall within the purview of a school facility director, from cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, floor care, integrated pest management, HVAC maintenance, and IAQ testing and monitoring, training, communications, so many things. The standard really seeks to sort of set the bar. It is a standard that is for not individual school buildings. It's not an accreditation program for individuals. It is a standard for an entire school district or college or university. The standard also has a number of other supporting components that go along with it. An assessment tool that can help schools understand right now, given where they are and what they're doing in their programs, how do they measure up against the standard? There are 100 points spread out across the standard, and so that assessment gives schools a scorecard that can help them understand what their score might be. We could go back one slide just for a second. I want to cover a couple of other things really quick. That assessment can also help schools figure out areas that they're doing really great and maybe other areas of opportunity. And from that point on, they use the guidebook, the training, virtual and in-person events that we do throughout the year to identify changes and really work towards ultimately meeting that standard. And when they're ready, they can submit the documentation needed and earn a certification against the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard, which provides a really exciting opportunity for schools to get the recognition they deserve for doing outstanding work in this area. And the biggest component, I think, is also the peer network. The program offers a platform for schools who are all sort of on this journey, working on the same types of things, to connect with one another, share lessons learned, brainstorm, challenge each other. It's a great sort of community of folks. So that's the program in a nutshell. I want to show you a little bit about how those 100 points are spread out across the standard and talk about the certification before we move into a little bit more on the IAQ monitoring. So here you can see we have several different categories in the standard, procurement being a big part, 16 points, facility operations and maintenance, building systems, and then the ongoing monitoring and evaluation and training. Schools that are working towards meeting the standard and ultimately the certification are able to sort of write their own recipe for which points in different sections that they want to go for to kind of build the program that makes the most sense for their district as they work towards certification. And on the next slide, you'll be able to see the levels of certification. So when a school district or university has gone through that process and accumulated the necessary points, they can earn that sort of third-party validated recognition at one of our certification levels to, again, really show off the incredible program that they have, which becomes a great way to celebrate with students, parents, administrators in your larger school community. So that's at a high level the program that we have. This is important because today we're going to be focusing on a subset of those points and talking specifically about indoor air quality monitoring and how doing that can help schools meet that standard. But before we get there, let's talk about what it is and why it's important. So, indoor air quality is critically important to student, staff, and occupant health, as well as educational outcomes. Air pollution has been found to negatively impact children's educational outcomes, and it can increase absenteeism and lead to long-term chronic health issues. The World Health Organization reports that indoor air pollutants alone can cause a wide range of adverse health outcomes in both children and adults, from respiratory illnesses to cancer to eye problems. In addition, children face special risks from their air pollution, because their lungs are growing, they tend to be very active, and they breathe in more air than adults. Studies consistently show that improving air quality, both indoor and outdoor, can create significant positive health and learning outcomes for students. There's a lot of data on this. There's more coming out all the time. Let's look at a couple of specific data points. So a review of 20 years of collected data provides strong evidence of the potential to improve children's health by reducing concentrations of harmful pollutants to improve the quality of the air we breathe. The next one really is amazing. In Los Angeles, after $700 air purifiers were installed in schools, student performance improved almost as much as it would if class sizes were reduced by a third. We also see that 5th grade students' math scores improved along with increasing ventilation through the study at the University of Tulsa. And on the next one, this one also really just strikes me. This study suggests that maintaining lower air pollution levels by 20% could improve the development of a child's working memory by 6.1. That's 4 extra weeks of learning time per year. It's incredible. So again, not new information, but having this handy kind of really helps us keep in mind why this is so incredibly important. Having healthy indoor air, really making sure that students are able to use all of their time at school to really do the best learning that they can, that it keeps them healthy, not to mention, of course, the staff in those spaces day in and day out as well. So very important stuff. So we talked about Healthy Green Schools and Colleges, the program and the standard. We talked a little bit about IAQ and why it's so important. And then now we're going to kind of bring them together and show you what's happening in the standard and how indoor air quality can help a school district or other educational institution meet the standard. So in our standard, up to 17 of those 100 points are available for IAQ planning, monitoring, and reporting related activities. It's one of the most highly incentivized sections of the standard, and it really encourages schools to pursue these activities through allocating that high number of points. In today's webinar, we're going to focus primarily on requirements related to CO2 monitoring and ongoing monitoring for contaminants, which is worth 7 points. And I think we have a table that kind of shows you that breakdown on our next slide. So all of this detail, if you're interested, you can take a look at our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard in its entirety. It's about 40 pages. This is baked into section 5, and you can see the different points here. And again, highlighted in blue, the 2 areas we're going to focus specifically on today. Now, if you are considering piloting an IAQ monitoring program in your schools, whether it's part of your plan to work towards certification, or it's simply because it's an important and critical thing to do in your buildings, there are some things that you're going to want to consider. When it comes to selecting devices, for example, there are 3 broad categories of monitors to be thinking about. Handheld monitors, wall-mounted, and integrated systems. And we're going to look at each one of those and give an overview. So the first one is handheld monitors. These are portable, they're easy to use, they're the least expensive option typically, and are a great way, if your schools aren't kind of doing any of this monitoring yet, a great first step to get you going. All of these things that we look at are going to require regular calibration. So that's, all of the options require that sort of maintenance. But these, they don't require professional installation. Training is usually pretty straightforward and easy. So again, a good starter option. The next one is wall-mounted monitors. These are fixed, they're installed in a fixed location. So there may be additional costs for that when you're thinking about that. They often have data logging capabilities and other features, such as an alarm for high CO2 levels. And then finally, integrated systems are sort of on the most sophisticated in this spectrum. They can be integrated with your existing HVAC or management system and continuously monitor levels and then adjust ventilation in response. They also come with, typically include software for data logging, analysis features. So the cost of this is typically going to be, much higher, but also many more features to consider. So you can see, regardless of which one of these different categories you're looking at, these are, some of the different considerations that you're going to want to take a look at. And there are a few more that we're going to discuss as well. So accuracy and reliability is an important thing, no matter which one of those options you're looking at. Making sure that this is something if you're going to be using to monitor the health of your indoor air, right? We want it to be accurate. We want it to be reliable. Sort of what does that look like across those different systems and the specific pieces of technology that you're looking at. Range of measurement is important when you're thinking about like the space that you have, and the different devices might be designed to measure, a different amount of space. So you're going to want, or different contaminant concentrations. So you're going to want to look at that as well. Ease of use, of course, is really important, which ties in with training, which is incredibly important to make sure that the technology is being used correctly. Data logging capability, we talked about a little bit, and integration with other systems, maintenance requirements, and costs. So, there is no exact right or wrong answer, but just things we wanted to make sure to point out to consider for you to consider as you're maybe looking at piloting a program in your district. Another additional set of things to really be thinking about if you're moving in this direction is looking at your different buildings, the spaces you have. Are you talking about one building, multiple schools across a district? What are the age of those buildings? And they're probably not all the same. And so what does that mean for your plan? What are the size of the classrooms or the spaces that you plan to put these in? And what is the existing ventilation system? And especially looking at a college campus or across a school district, you're likely going to have a bunch of different spaces of different sizes and different ages. And so really thinking about a plan and a program that's going to work well in all of those will be an important thing. I think the one other thing I would mention, as you're, if this is not something that you're doing in your district just yet, really thinking about it in terms of stepping out a pilot program. And we're going to hear a little bit about that from our panelists today. That sort of the move towards IAQ monitoring in your schools does not have to happen necessarily in one fell swoop. But as you really think about your different buildings, what your budget might be, and which sort of format of monitoring, when we looked at those 3 different types, what makes sense, thinking about it in terms of a pilot program and a couple of spaces, and then broadening it from there is going to be a great strategy to consider as well. So that's sort of high level broad strokes about IAQ monitoring in general. There are some specific federal funding opportunities that have been have emerged recently. We want to make sure that everyone is aware of them. We will also put together a one-pager with this information in more detail about each one of them and make it available to folks who are listening today. So if you're trying to figure out how to make this a possibility in your schools, this may be a good place to start. Okay, so let's get on to the really good part of today's webinar. I want to tell you a little bit about the panelists that are going to be joining us, and then give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then from there, we are going to have a chance to ask them lots of questions. So with us today, we have Ricky Martinez, who is the Assistant Director of Facility Services from Salt Lake City School District in Utah. We also have Lori Olson, Director of Environmental Services from Clark County School District in Nevada, and Catherine Walsh, Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Program Director from Boston Public Schools. So thrilled to have them. They're all doing incredible things in their districts, and really appreciate their willingness to join us today and share a bit about their IEQ monitoring programs. So I'm going to first ask Ricky to join us and just give us a little bit more introduction about his role. Ricky, tell us about a little bit about your district.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, so my name is Ricky Martinez. I am the Assistant Director of Facility Services, and I have the honor of managing 43 buildings that 19,000 plus students occupy, 4,200 educators, administrators, and support personnel occupy also. We have about 4.5 million square feet and a budget for the custodial department of $5,700,000. Just a bit about what I'm most proud of besides working here for the district and working with a great bunch of people, diverse people, is our action plan. We have a sustainability action plan that was headed by students. 3 high school students, our 3 high schools have an environmental club. They all were demanding that we do something about climate change. So they put together a plan, actually a sustainability action plan that was put into place just 2 years ago. And that plan is to be 100% clean, renewable energy in the electricity sector by 2030, and to meet 100% of all district operations energy needs with carbon neutral energy by 2040. And we've already started that plan in action. We've redone all of our lighting to LED in every school. We're just wrapping that up right now. That's the first phase. The second phase is going to be putting solar panels in all of our schools. That we can. There's some schools that we may not be able to, but with the schools that we're able to put solar panels on, we're going there. So that's what I'm most proud of, and I'm excited. It's a big lift. It's a really big job, but I think it's the right thing to do. And it does, all this stuff in our action plan have to do with indoor air quality, either directly or indirectly. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ricky, for joining us today and for sharing about that sustainability action plan. It's totally awesome. Also, Ricky is leading the team there at Salt Lake, and they are a current participant in our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program. So thrilled to have you working towards that certification. Thanks for joining us. So next, I would like to welcome Lori Olson from Clark County School District. Hey, Lori, welcome.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I am the environmental director at the Clark County School District, and we're the 5th largest school district in the nation, and it's a big job. We have 300,000 students, and we're a minority majority, which are a minority majority. We have over 40,000 employees. It's one of the largest employers in Nevada, with 400 buildings and over 386 of those being schools, the rest being administrative. And that equates to about 2,000 classrooms and 1,700 portable classrooms, with an overall square footage of 24 million square feet. So it's a daunting job. And but we have a great team here at the district, and we're going through a lot of growth as our population has increased. I've been in the Valley for over 24 years, and it was only 800,000, and now we're over 2 million with all the fun professional sports teams that have moved here, and for other economic reasons, I think we're expanding. And so the vision that I have for indoor air quality is related to facility preventative and maintenance and energy programs to go to more facility sustainability at the district. And that to me means looking more at overall health and well-building of our classrooms and spaces for our students. And I'm excited to be a part of that, to implement that. I recently visited what's known as a Net Zero High School in Washington, D.C. last week. And I was, I had been focusing on indoor air quality, but seeing that facility gave me this vision that I'm concerned about, CO2, increasing ventilations and the cost to do that, but they were able to do it, and they're bringing their CO2 down to 700. And so, and that is going to be a significant impact on the well-being to the students. And so that's where I'm at, and that's so go CCSD.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori. And we're thrilled to have Clark County as a participant in our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program. So
Likewise.
appreciate you being here today. Okay, and next I'd like to welcome Catherine Walsh from Boston Public Schools. Catherine, I have heard you speak on this topic in the past, and really just am so wowed by the work you have going on there in Boston. So really, really appreciate you joining us to share what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's an honor, honestly, so grateful to be here with you all. It's become just such an incredible national and even global community around this topic. And I think we all can support each other. We need all the support we can get. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm Catherine Walsh. I'm the Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Program Director for Boston Public Schools. A very proud and grateful director of an incredible team. We are responsible as a team for our district's utilities, energy usage. We give green building design recommendations. We're responsible for energy efficiency, all of the environment, health, and safety work, our outdoor teaching and learning programs, our zero waste programs, our drinking water programs. So we really try to come from a holistic approach of, given that we're in facilities management within the district, we try to create initiatives, programs, operational improvements that can scale up very easily and reach as many of our schools as possible. And that's important because we are the oldest school system in the country, and that comes with having really, really old buildings. Our oldest building is from the 1890s. Many of our buildings, 2/3 in fact, do not have central HVAC systems. They rely on operable windows for ventilation. So a lot of what we do is in parallel to an effort around capital projects and capital initiatives. So what can we also do to have investments in our buildings, strategic decision-making around making our buildings greener, healthier school environments for all of our students, our staff, and our families. We are so proud to serve just an incredibly diverse community, both in our students and our staff, but they are often also coming from underrepresented communities. So that equity piece of everything we can do is super key. We think that kind of lens is woven through all of our sustainability initiatives. So even though we might try to reach every building, we're trying to work with each individual community to tailor that program or initiative specific to their school community, specific to even the operational needs within their buildings. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and talk about this really important topic. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Catherine. Appreciate that. We are now going to sort of bring all of our panelists together, and I've got lots of questions that I want to ask you guys about your IEQ monitoring, and questions are already starting to stream in from listeners too. So The first question, I'll give each of you a chance to answer. Would love to have you give us an overview of your current IQ monitoring program. Tell us about sort of how you got started. What was the impetus for that? What were the biggest considerations when you were kind of thinking about how to first get started? Because maybe what you have now is not your first iteration. Would love to know that. So Ricky, I'm going to ask you first.
All right. So what you said at the beginning with all the monitors, the handhelds, the wall mounts, the ones that are in our systems already, we have all three of those. Some are a little bit more advanced than others. So we started off with the handhelds, and we've always had CO2 sensors in our air handler units from the return air ducts. And that will monitor that, because if it gets to 1,000 PMs, then the dampers will open 30% more up, so it could, ventilate or flush out the CO2s. And so we've always had those. The one thing that we were looking for, because we never had these, are the wall mounts that are more. So those ones, the handhelds kind of capture what's going on right now. We wanted something that we want to see trends, spikes, what's happening in our buildings, and are the things we're doing working? Are all these initiatives that we have, like our integrated pest management, our green cleaning, the green cleaners, are they really working for indoor air quality? We believe they are, because we see studies, but we don't have the proof. Let's see the proof, not only for people that want to know, because of the pandemic kind of highlighted indoor air quality because of being an airborne disease. People are going to demand, are we doing the right things for ventilation, for all this, cleaning, disinfecting, all that for indoor air quality that's making our students and our staff safe. So for my peace of mind, besides that, is I want to make sure we're doing the right things for the health of the occupancy. That's first and foremost. Is we need to find out if this stuff is working, these great things we're doing is working, and the benefits are helping our students. So we wanted to look at these wall mounts, and so we did some researching, talking, and kind of fell into our lap. I was talking to a CTE coordinator of all people. You wouldn't think CTE, how does that have to do with indoor quality? And for some reason, I got onto the topic of monitoring indoor quality, and she's like, "Hey, I have a friend that has monitors. That's what he does for a living. He sells monitors for indoor quality." And so she connected me with him, and we piloted his out. We didn't mount it to a wall. You don't really have to. You had to put it at a certain height though. So we decided to take that one monitor that he let us use, and I gave it to my HVAC programmer. And I said, "I'm going to task you for this job. I want you to work on this and tell me what you think of this monitor." And so he did that. He put it in a school for a week and put it in every section of the building, because there was only one, and it got the data from that. And he really liked how accurate it was, how it measured not just CO2s, but humidity, temperature, TVOCs, PM2s. That's something we never had. So he was very impressed by that. And then when he got the data back from the third party, the business, he was impressed on how they put it together and how it could be put in the spreadsheet. So he came to me and he said, "I really like this monitor." I said, "Okay, but I want you to look at other monitors. Don't just fall in love with the first one you see. Go out and research other monitors that has these same specs that you love, and try those ones out and price them." Of course, we always have to look at price too. So that's what he did. He went and got those specs, researched, got the information, had some vendors that could give him the information on their monitoring system, and gave him one to try out. So he found another one that he liked that was close to the one that we used, and he tried that one out, and he didn't like it as much. He didn't feel like it was as accurate, and it was a higher cost too. So that was the other downfall on that. So we decided to go with this monitor. And because of our budgets and we weren't able to get it in ESSER because we use ESSER to upgrade all of our HVA systems and our ventilation systems. That was to us more important at that time, especially with, like you were saying, the older buildings, the ones that the life age of the systems are going close to the end. We decided to upgrade those first. So we used our budget to get it. And because we can't get one in every school, because that's going to be a really high cost, we decided to start with 4. And how we came up with that decision is we could do it in quadrants. We could break up schools in 4ths and put one in each quadrant for a week, and then move on to the next school for a week and move on to the next school. I know it's a slow process, but it's the beginning process for us. Ultimately, our goal is to have a group of them in each school. It's going to be slow because we're only getting a few a year, but having that option to rotate it around covers that. Like, let's say we need to monitor this school because they feel like people are getting sick, or they want to make sure our indoor quality is good. So we'll take those monitors to that school and measure it, and then get the data from them, the third party, and show the stakeholders that, hey, this is good. We're doing good. Everything is good. Everything's measured to the right levels. And if it's not, then we make adjustments. Then we'll say, hey, maybe we need to put a more restrictive filter, like go up to MERV 13s. Maybe we need to open up our ventilation a little bit more. Whatever we need to do. And sometimes it could be people could be the problem. They're propping doors open, or they're doing stuff that's not conducive to indoor air quality. So we have to look at all that and make those kind of adjustments. Now, right now, I just found out from our sustainability action plan that we are piloting 3 schools for energy efficiency, not just for CO2s. We're putting the CO2 sensor in every classroom. And how it works is, for energy savings, it'll monitor occupancy, just like a sensored light. So let's say you have a full classroom. So the CO2 sensor is going to work like it should be. It's going to open up the dampers to make sure we're at that level under 1,000 ppms. But when that classroom or that room is not occupied, it's going to be like a sensor light. It's going to dim down to a level to where it doesn't need to be. So it's not running energy all that time. And there's no one in there to be concerned about with the CO2, so we're piloting a high school and 2 schools right there with that. So right now we're at the beginning parts of wall mounts and these CO2 sensors in the classroom. So that's where we're at.
Thanks for sharing all that, Ricky. I think what like really stands out when you talk about this is, thinking about schools that maybe haven't thought about this, aren't doing anything just yet, or are trying to figure out how to get support from decision makers or make a case for budget allocation, figuring out sort of like what are the baby steps that we can take to kind of socialize this and make sure that culture change and the way that we're all, like, what becomes normal in schools is changing, and this is part of it. And the approach that you guys are taking is sort of those incremental things that help move that. So appreciate you sharing that.
Yes, we don't want to, sorry, let me follow up with that. We don't want to overwhelm our guys either, because it's a new thing. So I don't want to put a big system and say, hey, now you guys got to manage this. It's good to take these baby steps, but don't get me wrong. If I had the opportunity to get a monitor in every classroom I'm taking it. So there you go.
Well, fingers crossed that opportunity comes along.
Yep.
Lori, tell us about your program and sort of how you got that going.
So I was fortunate that my predecessor we have an internal environmental staff that has doing things like we do our own investigations for asbestos, mold through the work order system, that kind of thing. So that staff was here, but what I brought to the table when I started 8 years ago was my background is environmental as well. So we did do the handheld CO2 monitoring as we started. But my recommendation to you, if you don't have that internal staff, is one thing you can do is use the Green School Standard to figure out how you can, identify potential staff in the district already that can implement that standard, and then supplement that with professional services, environmental contractors that can come in and help you get that program going, is what I would recommend to get, going with your indoor air quality program.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. Do you want to share a little bit about I love that you started with those handheld CO2 monitors and now have kind of gone on to the next iteration. Do you want to tell us what you have in place currently?
Yeah. So during that investigations, I'll give a real specific example. A teacher had reached out with a work order saying, I must have mold in my classroom. I don't feel well. And all the time in the classroom, and it's a portable classroom. And I feel okay at home. So that's a typical story. So one of the things we also do is we give the occupant an interview questionnaire to fill out. It logs when they're having these symptoms and what their symptoms are. So we can add that to our investigation. And then, so what we found out was her using our handheld monitor, her CO2 levels were like 2,800. I don't know. I'd have to look back at the data, but they were really high. They weren't hazardous high, right? That's over 5,000, 4,000. Those things are not good, but no wonder and the students, I can imagine what they were feeling like when they were in that environment. And it turned out all our classrooms, portable classrooms, have a single package unit, just like you have at home typically, and they have no fresh air intake. So we adapted the unit and added what I call an eyebrow, and added 100% fresh air. And she thought she just couldn't believe the changes she had in coming to work. She just felt so much better. And again, the data showed that. So knowing that data, and I've been preaching, we got to find out what's going on with all those portables. So I did a pilot program at a high school that was nothing but portable classrooms. And that was interesting because what we found out there, I was expecting to find CO2 problems, but we found out all kinds of things. We put continuous monitors on the walls, breathing zone level, and then we also put them at the return air. We wanted to see what was more valuable as far as the data. And just a note on that, we felt like doing the breathing zone was better than at the intake air. So I see some nods there, so I'm glad to see that. And we did see some things, unexpected things, and it brings up the point that most of our indoor air pollution is occupants bringing in things like we've had complaints of odors, and we find a rotten orange hidden in the desk, and things like that. Skin cells are a major problem with particulate matter. If you're not having adequate cleaning or you're not using HEPA filters or vacuums, you can have high levels there. And that was kind of an indication that the custodial staff wasn't, needed to focus more in those areas or weren't doing those areas. And so that's a way indoor air quality monitors can help you as well. But what we found out so that's how we got started, a pilot program. But what we did find out is, and that's the other thing. So when we look at health and well-being, as that's my vision, it's more about comfort as well. There was a recent survey that they did for teachers, and that the highest percentages were things like it's too cold, it's too hot. It wasn't, these other pollutants that we think about. And we are a school district, so we're not like a manufacturing facility where we have to worry about, the chemicals that are being produced, and being emitted and exposed to in the school environment. But what we did find out is that the thermostats were all broken. So we ended up implementing over the summer, installing 1,700 smart thermostats throughout the district. And they do also have CO2 monitoring on them. And they have the capability, if the units have economizers on them, to control the fresh air based on CO2 levels now. So, but we don't have those units. So indoor air quality, the way I did it was we started small, we did a pilot scale, and you assess what your issues are, do the surveys as well to find out what the occupants' experiences are, and then go from there on whether to renovate, repair, or replace anything in the system that you need to do. And that's where we're at with indoor air quality monitoring units. So
Thanks, Lori. I love that. It's such a great story of like sort of starting small, conducting those investigations based on like what students and staff are really experiencing, and then figuring out what's going on and scaling from there. That's so important. And I mentioned earlier, and I think there's been a link in the chat about the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard, where you can check out everything in its entirety. We are not focusing on this section in particular today, but there is a lot of great content and information specific criteria around cleaning chemicals and what to use and what not to use. So if you're interested in looking at that, definitely take a look. And of course, all of those things contributing to indoor air quality. So appreciate you sharing, Lori. It's such a great program you've got going there. Catherine, would love to hear about what's happening, what you have going on in Boston Public Schools.
Sure, thank you. So it's important, I think, to recognize that a good amount of school districts across the country prior to the pandemic had, including ourselves at Boston Public Schools, had existing indoor air quality management plans. We maybe didn't have live monitoring, which I think is what has become more exciting and new to a lot of people over the last 3 years, but certainly had really in-depth indoor air quality management plans, and definitely put a plug out for the EPA's Tools for Schools program. Just that layered risk reduction approach is what we take here at BPS. It's having all of these strategies working in parallel to address IAQ. So it was mentioned, I think Ricky and Lori mentioned this, your school environmental audits, your hair management plan, the cleaning chemicals you're using, are repairs and maintenance of your ventilation and buildings happening? For example, are you addressing leaks? Do you have a mold response, mold remediation plan? Are you also making investments? So that indoor air quality monitoring and reporting piece is just one layer within that larger program. And so for us, historically, our environmental division had been conducting in-person air quality testing with handheld units. Again, better than nothing, but that is a snapshot in time. It does not give you those trends like Ricky mentioned, so that you can actually see what's happening after you leave that moment in time. I mean, you could get a great reading at 9 a.m. and have something going on at 11 a.m. and you wouldn't even know about it. So how do you take action if you don't know about it, right? You can't respond to the things you need to respond to. So we had started as a team doing market research prior to the pandemic to look at live monitoring. We have over 4,500 classrooms. The in-person was just not cutting it. And what the pandemic did for us was actually provide a financial opportunity and a leadership buy-in opportunity. So we were able, given the existing trust that we had with the administration, the superintendent at the time, the mayor at the time, we were able to put forth a proposal for live monitoring and actually tap into the federal relief funding. So we did tap into ESSER funding, and I know we'll talk about that later in this session. But for us, it's about, and I would recommend this to anyone, really think about the why. Like, why do we want to do monitoring? What are we trying to achieve with that? And for us, it was to have better data, more consistent, continuous data, so that we could take appropriate, better informed action, that we could prioritize our decision making. You know, when you can see every school and you have a limited budget or you have limited staff capacity, that data helps you actually prioritize maybe the more serious issues in action and lifetime action, but also prioritize your investments as a district. It certainly can be a really great and powerful communications tool. So that was another reason we wanted to couple the live monitoring with an actual public dashboard, is the way it has elevated this topic in our own community, get people talking about it, asking questions, like questioning what we're doing. That's all great stuff. That we talk about communications is a two-way conversation. It's not a one-way. And so being able to have an engagement tool where you can connect with folks on a broader scale was really important for us, to build further trust and agency. So again, think about, what do you even want to monitor? For us, it was CO2 as a ventilation marker, CO, 2 types of particulate matter, and thermal comfort, so relative humidity and temperature. And that's what we chose for us. That was important for us as parameters. And then we put out an RFP. I really recommend an RFP over an invitation to bid. An RFP allows you to receive proposals, actually have a scoring and review process, so that you get to have more input on what you're selecting rather than just accepting the lowest bid, which quite frankly could be junk. It could get you something that's going to be more harmful than good. With an RFP, we even did interviews of our highest applicants. You know, you can bring them in, meet the company. Are they the real deal? I think that's really key right now. There's so many vendors out there popping up. Many even came out during the pandemic to make a buck, sadly. And so it's really important that we're all supporting each other, even in navigating that space, so that schools are not being taken advantage of in an attempt to do the right thing. And the last thing I'll add is, I know sometimes it can be scary to find out what you don't know if you don't feel like you have the funding or support to actually take action on what you don't know. But I can't stress enough, I always think it's more important that you are in control, that the reality is there are things in our buildings. It is better for us to be responsible, to care, to be committed, to be the ones finding out that information and finding out what's happening in our classrooms and taking action. And I will say that sometimes having that data is what flips it, right? It's what can get you that funding. It's what can get you that support. It's one of the reasons we're pushing for national standards or state standards for schools around air quality. That's a compliance issue. It's really easier to get support when it's a compliance issue. And that's a broad strokes thing of all the things that were in our mind when we were choosing to embark on this.
Thank you, Catherine, for sharing all of that. So many different things baked into what you just said. I want to ask a question. You started to talk about this and want to hear more from you, and also from Lori and Ricky, about what are you communicating with your broader school community about your program? How did you decide whether or not it should be a public dashboard? What has been the reception and or the questions around that? Do you want to elaborate? Catherine, we'll start with you if there's more you want to share on that topic.
Sure. We had a culture of transparency already, so we never even approached this like thinking that whatever we collected, we could hide. I mean, we're public servants. We work in public schools. We're serving the public. We were likely going to get asked about it anyway, so why not take that first step and be the ones that are sharing it, being open and transparent? It was also for us, just, again, it's not in our ethos, I guess. It's almost a moral calling for us. We don't want to hide things. And then I think just trying to build better trust and communication and transparency. And we were in a tough spot with that. Trust was really broken with our community, particularly during the pandemic. And so you don't want to further that distrust by coming across like you're trying to hide anything. I would say I do want to be clear though, do what's best for your community. Like what may work and how we do things in Boston may not be the culture somewhere else. And so I think one of the lessons we've learned after the fact, and we're going to be embarking on through a community advisory board, is actually having the community share with us how they'd like to receive information, or what types of information we could share, or what kind of reporting, or what does it look like? Certainly what languages it should be in. So that's something you can do even together, is get that feedback early on from your community about how and what would they like to see shared. That can be very helpful. The dashboard itself just has been incredible in terms of the support in funding and investments, leadership, like just elevating this topic at a level like it's never been before in Boston. And to me, that's invaluable. Getting grants because of it. We got a $15.5 million grant from the state to do ventilation in 5 schools. Having this program helped with that. I think it's also elevated a conversation at the global level that we weren't expecting. We truly kind of maybe naively did this thinking only our community would be looking at it. And I've had the privilege of just having conversations with folks all over the country, all over the world about this because of the dashboard. And we're learning that benefits Boston, right? Again, it's a conversation. We are learning from others in ways that helps Boston get better, in the same way that maybe we're sharing and being transparent about our mistakes and challenges so that they'll help someone else. The last thing I'll add, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, is through this work, we've developed a number of like materials. So whether it's a toolkit around healthy school environments that we had prior to this, we've updated that. We've updated our IAQ management plan. We created a response action plan just solely connected to the monitoring system so that the public could see when we're getting certain readings, what's our actually response action, how are we communicating that. We've created some fact sheets, and we've also, and I'll share more later, developed a research partnership with Boston University School of Public Health. And that has been really key around the data analysis and communications.
Amazing. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing all that. Ricky, what about you in Salt Lake? How are you thinking about this, communicating with school stakeholders?
So, yes. So right now we are in the beginning process of that. I think I mentioned in our last meeting, Sarah, that I was calling out people on dashboards, and I'm glad you mentioned dashboards, Catherine, because that's where we want to go with this. Is we do want to get that information out to the community and stakeholders. Right now, we put it on our webpage in our facility services, and it's more of a preventative maintenance part of it. And in our HVA, it does tell us what we monitor and everything like that. So anybody publicly could go to that. But I do want to expand it to where Catherine's at. She's going to be my new best friend, I tell you. I am going to call. I'm taking notes like no other. But right now, it's a need to know basis. We have the information, we have the data. And if someone asks us if they want more information, we're happy to share it. But we want to get to the point where we have a dashboard at every school that shows all the trends and stuff in their building and how their air quality is managed. We're going to get there. I know we are, but I definitely need to get with Catherine and find out, how about her dashboard and how they got it and how much, of course, cost. And I do like the RFP way of doing this because Catherine's right. I've been involved in a lot of RFPs, and you don't have to take that lowest bid. That's what I don't like about procurement. I get it. I understand why they have to do that because they have to be financially responsible. But most of the times, cheaper is not better. You do need to, you get what you pay for. And when it comes to monitoring, I don't think we get the just on that. We need to get the highest quality monitoring. So great advice on the RFP, and I'm going to go that route also with my procurement, because you can interview each group. You can put your specs. It's kind of like I was telling you, Sarah. You're telling the vendors what you want. You're not telling them. You're not coming and telling you what you need. We're saying this is what we need. What can you do for me? Can you provide this for us? So I really like that process. So right now, all we do is we put it on our web pages. We get the information out to schools. The schools will get those to the parents, with whether it be in a letter or an email, or even on social media too.
Awesome. Thanks, Ricky. And Lori, how about Clark County? How are you thinking about sort of communicating with your broader school community about your monitoring?
Unfortunately, we're not there yet. I got to deal with the internal staff first, so that it's not that we're not transparent. It's just that I haven't worked out those plans. So like Ricky, I'll be reaching out to Catherine. I mean, we have the dashboard right now. I've done training with our maintenance staff on how to look at it and use that information when they get a work order in for, but all the indoor air quality work orders come to my department, so we use it in that manner as well. So we'll get there, but just not yet.
Yeah, no worries at all. Ricky, I see you waving your hand. Do you want to chime in?
I forgot to add this, because what Catherine said about partnering up with colleges, we are doing that right now too with indoor air quality monitoring. I'm in the asthma task force, and this is where I found this gentleman. His name is Daniel Mendoza, and he works for the University of Utah. And what he's doing for equity too purposes is he's putting out outside air monitors on the roofs of our schools on the west side and on the east side, the Title I school and a non-Title I school. And they're monitoring trends on indoor quality. They're actually monitoring for black carbon, smaller PMs. We monitor for PM2s, but they're really monitoring, they're intense monitoring for smaller particles, because those are the most dangerous ones, like smoke, like forest fires, pollution, because those are smaller PMs and that could get into your bloodstream. Instead of larger PM like PM2s, you could cough out or you could, sneeze out. But when it becomes smaller particles, it could actually get into your bloodstream. So what they're doing is they're monitoring the trends on that, how much is out in those buildings and how much is getting into our buildings. So they're doing both outdoor and indoor, and they're getting that data, and they're actually presenting it to our board and saying, this school is doing great, but this school, he's already talked to us about it. We have one high school that it's concerned that it's getting in a certain part of our building, the black carbon, and we need to make some adjustments there. And we are right now. We're working with him on how to do those adjustments and to make sure that that's not getting in there. But it's a great thing to do. That's part of a monitoring program is partner up with your university, and they'll do it for free. They're doing it no cost at all. So
Sarah, sorry, can I just quickly highlight something Ricky and Lori said, and I want to commend them back. I think they made an important point for all of us to think about it. When you are the facilities and operations folks, one of the hardest things to do can be to communicate, because we're so busy doing, right? We're in a world where we have to constantly take action. So much of what we do is a fire drill every day. It's responsive. As much as we like to be not reactive, it's just our world. And so I think what's key about what they share and what they're doing is they're using their data to take action. And maybe after the fact, at some point, there'll be more communications around it. But what the real community really does care, and all of us should care about, is that action piece, right? How are you making things better really in your buildings? And so you may have a team or a situation where you can't do both at the same time, So just want to commend that. And it's not an either or, it's definitely a both and the action part is really, really key.
Thank you for raising that up, Catherine. It's such an important point and along the lines of what I was thinking too, because it's a process, right? Like, and being ready is as transparent as you might want to be, and being ready to communicate with your full community. You first have to know what you're doing, know what those actions are. You have to get your team on board and get them ready to talk about it and understanding it and properly trained. And then it sort of like goes from there. So it is a journey. And that is one of the reasons why we invited specifically the three of you to be part of today's webinar, because you're at different points along that way. And the goal really here is to share with schools across the country how to get started and what it looks like, and sort of what you've learned along the way, what some of those challenges have been, maybe what you would have done differently if you could go back, and what's great about it. Because again, this is where we're having those conversations so that we can help schools ability to kind of move along the spectrum across the board. So no shame in any of that. It's all great stuff. So thank you for highlighting that, Catherine. I have a couple of questions that have come in from the audience that I want to get to, and I've got more I want to ask you guys about as well. First, we had a question about the EPA Tools for Schools IEQ management program, which I think, Catherine, you mentioned. So the question that came through was, does the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard integrate with EPA Tools for Schools? And I'm going to tell you, yes, yes, it does. And that was very intentional. And our friends, I know they're very familiar with lots of folks in our network, Tracy Engard, Sheila Brown over at EPA, such great supporters and partners in this work always. In particular, the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard directly references compliance with the Tools for Schools in our HVAC section, which is 4.1, 4.1.1 actually, the HVAC system maintenance, which is one of the required prerequisites for meeting the standard, as well as section 5.1.1.1. Mold, moisture, and humidity control. So again, check out the standard in its entirety. You can see directly where we're pointing to that incredible program. And if you're doing that, we want to make sure that, and you're trying to meet the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard, that it's easy. If you're doing one that, we can kind of point to that to satisfy parts of our standard. But curious, Catherine, you mentioned Tools for Schools. If there's anything that you or Ricky or Lori want to share about that program and how you're using it and how it's helped you, want to give you a space to mention that.
I'll just mention that I did start with that when I first got back here, and they have tons of webinars that are free and online that your staff can watch and learn. It's a tremendous value.
That's exactly how I first got to meet Catherine. They put out such great stuff. So true.
That's same. We started with Tools for Schools too. It was the person that was in my position 2 positions ago. No, not my predecessor, but before him. He's the one that started us off with Tools for Schools with our IPM program and our green cleaning program. And then we just expanded from there with HVAC and everything else. So yes, it's a great tool, no pun intended, but it's like you were saying, there's so many webinars, there's so much information. It's a great resource. And I suggest you go with that when you start any kind of program, green cleaning, IPM, indoor air quality.
Awesome. Thanks, Ricky. Okay, so next question. How are this audience member wanted to know, how are you panelists doing with addressing ASHRAE 241 relative to COVID management? And just for a bit of context for listeners, in case you're not familiar, ASHRAE Standard 241 for control of infectious aerosols provides extensive requirements for use of filtration and air cleaning to effectively and safely achieve meat equivalent clean, I'm sorry, I'm reading because I didn't know this off the top of my head, clean airflow requirements efficiently and cost effectively. So that's the ASHRAE 241. Wondering how you guys are doing with that. Is that something that you're looking at? Feel free to unmute if that's a question you want to field.
I'll go first if that's okay. So what's most important is that kids stay in the classroom, right? And so we did just get, we're the first school district in the US that received the UL certification for that ASHRAE standard. We received that last week at 7 of our schools. And at first I was just like, really? Because it's something I got to do, take away from other things, and and money as well. But the importance of it is, we know our ventilations at those schools is adequate, so that when a student comes in and isn't feeling well, that they're less likely, the risk is down. It's risk management for us to show that our ventilation systems are working properly at those schools. So
Awesome. And congratulations, Lori. That's
yes.
great.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's a huge undertaking. And it's really helpful to have you out there as an example for other school districts to look at. And we'll be reaching out to you for that. I was going to say it was really helpful to have this clean air equivalent focus, because a lot of school districts are dealing with pollution in their ambient air. And so this idea of just pumping in outdoor air, outdoor fresh air, is becoming more challenging. Wildfires, urban pollution, we're dealing with just, it's not as simple anymore, I guess, as that. So I think it also for us was good that it connected to some of the strategies we had already implemented in response to the pandemic. So installing over 5,000 portable HEPA units, air purifiers in our classrooms, upgrading to MERV 13 filters. We did about 4,400 of those across the district. So just being able to talk about that and have this guidance from ASHRAE that's kind of in parallel, or at least complementary to the existing guidance that they updated, was helpful. And then it gives you really a nudge as a school district too, to go back with your team, with whether it's your energy team, your utility team, and just make sure, like Lori said, that risk management plan is in place, like you're ready to trigger it, or you're already implementing it. Kind of like we had to trigger a pandemic response. The practice itself, the scheduling in your building management system is already in place. So.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Ricky.
Oh, same. I mean, we followed the guidelines for ASHRAE too, as MERV 13s. We really concentrate on our filtration because of what Catherine just said. Salt Lake City is known for their bad outdoor air quality. In fact, I think we got one of the worst in the world. So opening up to bring it outdoor air in was a challenge for us, because that air is not as good as what we're doing. So we really concentrate on the filtration part of it, adding MERV 13s to all of our buildings.
Thanks, Ricky. So a question came in from another listener, and I want to circle. We started to cover this a little bit, but want to circle back. I think Lori, you brought it up. This is actually from David in Maine. He says that the sort of IQ testing that they're focused on is bioaerosols, specifically mold and airborne particles. So to what extent, if any, are you all exploring monitoring contaminants beyond CO2? So we've started talking about it a little bit, but just would love to get him a really specific answer. I think the sort of related question is like, I don't know this answer, not sure if you do, like, are there handheld monitors that monitor for that stuff? Are they specifically really only CO2? What are you monitoring for in the systems that you're using, and how are you looking at that? So Lori, I'm going to start with you.
Thanks for that. I'm glad they brought this question up. So, and the reason being is because across the US, we have different environments. So it might be outdoor air, it might be the humidity that promotes mold. A lot of times, being in the driest state in the US, you wouldn't think we would have mold, but we do, because we have roof leaks, we have monsoon season, and we have flooding. And so and along with, our water heaters break. So we definitely have mold in our school, and we do manage that. So my background is actually microbiology, and so I've taken a ton of air samples. So in general, in Nevada, if the contamination is inside the walls, it's really not unless you're sensitive to mold, it's really it's not a concern. Of course, we remove it when we find it. But that being said, the other thing I wanted to say is with the indoor air quality monitors that I piloted, some companies, and this is important, can do algorithms with the PM data and the other monitoring data to come up with a mold index for your space. They take into account the humidity as well. So I just wanted to put that out there to answer this question.
Thank you, Lori. Catherine or Ricky, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, we looked at that too. We wanted to just monitor more than CO2s. Like I said from the beginning, we wanted to broaden the range of what we monitor. And one of the ones was the TVOCs. We really wanted to look at that because of our cleaners, because that's what measures what you're using, your cleaning units and stuff like that, your cleaning program. And we were so proud of our green cleaning initiatives that we did. We felt like we were ahead of the times, but we really wanted to see if that was really working also. So that was another one that we were big on, is TVOCs. And we're doing great. After monitoring it, we're right where we should be. And that's awesome. Now we have the proof to tell people, hey, our green cleaners are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing and protecting your children.
Thanks, Ricky. Catherine, I wasn't sure if you had something you wanted to add or not.
I can, but I know you've got a lot of questions, so move on.
Okay. So I guess I'm keeping an eye on the time. We've got a little bit of time left and lots of questions. One, I want to make sure that we get to, given everything that we've sort of covered so far, I'm wondering, is there anything that you haven't been asked about, that you haven't had a chance to talk about, that you're like, I want other schools to know this, or to consider this, or ask me this? I have something to say or something to share about that.
One thing I forgot to add in our monitoring program is we just added in all of our secondary schools, vaping monitors. And that's big. The reason why is because bathrooms are a small area, and you have a bunch of kids vaping in there and other kids that aren't doing it. It affects them. And it doesn't just pick up vaping, it picks up all the CO2s, it picks up loud. If it's loud, it has aggression. An alarm will come off. So it monitors more than just that hairspray. If girls go in there with their hairspray and spray it, it'll alert. So that's huge, because they got an intent to stop kids from vaping in school, but indirectly it's helping indoor air quality also, because bathrooms are, like I said, a small area. We do have ventilation in there, but not ventilation to support something like that in a building. So totally forgot about that. We just barely started it, that's why. But they are in our schools. The kids already found out, and they're starting to rip them off the wall, so we have to put guards on them. And the issue we're having right now, because it's new, is monitoring them, who's when we get the alert, how do we get these, stop these kids from doing it? So it's a new thing, but that's what I wanted to add because I forgot to add that earlier.
Yeah, and certainly connected to the indoor air quality for sure. Lori?
I just, so why do monitoring, that's kind of, or implementing, why do it? Anyway, you can't fix what you don't know. That's kind of my theme. You can't improve what you don't know. And, when you have funding, when you have the information, you can make data-driven decisions, and you're more likely to get funding to make these improvements. So I just wanted to put out that. And one last thing about the funding, I've worked for federal agencies as well, and as a contractor, and I found that finding the way to spend money is one of the hardest things public entities have. And there are joiners for that the school districts can use. So let's say another school district has put out an RFP for monitors, and they've gone through their selection process. There's ways to join to that RFP to get funding. That's a high level summary of that. But
Yeah.
that's something you can use.
Thanks, Lori. Catherine?
I think maybe, yeah, they said great things. So Ricky and Lori, along the funding, if it's helpful, a little more detail about the ESSER funding that we got. We got about $6.7 million for this project, but over 3 years, it's a 3-year contract. And that's a lot of money for some school districts. So I just want to be conscious of that, depending on how much you got. And your contract may not actually be that much. It really depends on you, how you frame it. For us, it was a worthwhile investment because it was only about 1.6% of the ESSER budget we got as a district. And the way we've used it, it's not going away. And that's really exciting. Like, the district and the city are fully committed to funding this in our operating budget moving forward. So, I guess the other thing I'll say is a little bit more about the BU research project. And Ricky, you mentioned this as well. It's been so beneficial to us to have a research partner with Boston University who just has kind of the experience, the skills, even the data processing center to help us process all the data. We collect over 2 billion data points a year with this system. That's overwhelming for operations folks. So having them help us kind of, fix any anomalies that are incorrect because of calibration issues, connectivity issues, power issues, those are all things to think of. Many of us as school districts are in areas where you might either have an existing relationship with the university, or there's a university that's really eager to get connected with schools. And maybe you could be that person, that door that they get to connect with and open the school to. But if you can do that, I really, really recommend it. It's been very beneficial. But definitely look for a researcher who's all about you, right? There are researchers out there that want to use your data for their own purposes. We've been very lucky that our partnership has been all about what kind of research can we do, what kind of documents, communication materials, papers can we do to help you, Boston Public Schools, on an implementation level. So just look for that kind of a research partnership.
That's incredible. What an amazing partnership and such a support for the entire Boston community, right? Like that's phenomenal. I'm curious. I mean, we've talked a lot about how the programs that you have helped with make the case for further investments. We've talked about how it's improve the quality of air in a really tangible way for students and staff. I'm curious, is there anything about it that like really surprised you? Were there any unexpected positive outcomes from the programs that you've put into place? Anything that you weren't anticipating and were like, oh, in addition to all this other stuff, look at this. Tricky question. And it's okay. Maybe the answer is no, and that's okay.
Go ahead, Lori.
No, you go ahead.
I'll just say very quickly, it might sound cheesy, but literally the community that we've all created, having a national schools community made up not just of schools, but the way the federal government has been engaged, the way state public health officials been engaged, vendors even. I've seen vendors engaging at a level with schools that's not so salesy. It's really about helping us. The federal government's been so accessible on this. That has surprised me more than anything, and in a really positive way. And we need it. So yeah.
I love it. Awesome.
I'm still waiting for my surprise.
That's okay. You can let us know when you get it. That's all right. That's fair. I know we're almost out of time. There's one or two quick things I want to make sure that we cover, which actually just sort of builds on what you just said, Catherine, but you also raised it in a different way earlier when you were talking about, during COVID, a lot of companies sort of coming out with really aggressive marketing to schools. This isn't unique to like IAQ monitoring. This is certainly happens like in other categories as well. And also thinking about like the huge jobs that you all already have, trying to figure out like how to vet partners, how to vet technology, how to think about what to do next. And that's one area where resources like Healthy Green Schools and Colleges, Green Seal, I mean, there's so many, right? Certifications when they're available in different categories of technology and products exist are great, and they don't exist necessarily for everything that you're looking at. And you said something, Catherine, about how schools need to kind of share, look out for each other, and that's part of what we're trying to do here. I know there are other places and other communities really building this national network of folks kind of all supporting each other in this area. It's related to one of the questions that came up in the Q&A about if the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard will at some point provide the opportunity for certifications for equipment technology in this realm. The answer to that is right now. So first of all, the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, the standard is for a facility management program. It does not certify specific products or equipment, but it does look to put its arms around sort of and help shape and provide resources for schools as you're making procurement decisions. And so in the standard, you'll find in the procurement section, it points very clearly towards when you're looking at, making purchases in these different kinds of categories, look for this, this, and this. And sometimes it's very clear, right? Like if we're talking about chemical purchases, there are existing certifications for those. Green Seal, Safer Choice, Ecologo, they exist, and it's easy to point to them. In this area where that doesn't quite exist, we focused more initially on sort of creating conversations so that schools can share with each other what they're doing, helping assemble like things to consider while not providing all of the answers, because again, it's not one size fits all for everyone. Helping provide, as we did today, things that you may want to take into consideration as you're making choices. So just wanted to kind of answer that question for our audience, but also give you each a last chance to share, like if there's any specific lessons you learned. If you want to share what companies you're working with, you are welcome to do that. You're not obligated to do that. Or just say like, I'm willing to share, let people reach out to me. So want to give you a last chance to kind of mention that, and then we're gonna wrap up.
I'll share first. I've heard that people do pilot scales. I recommend pilot scales. So I've heard that people try more than one product and see about, so they can look at the cost, the implementing it and installing it, all those things, the support you get with who's ever doing that. Some companies are really good. They might have a good product, but they might not have the support to install 1,700 of these things throughout the district. And so that's kind of the point I wanted to make with that. The other thing that's important to know about all this equipment is security around the data gathering, the cloud, who has the data, who owns the data. Don't make the mistake of not owning the data. You should have full access to your data. That's really important too when considering the products.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Lori. And I think to your point, it's almost sometimes less about like the specific company or product and more about like, how did you right size your choice, right? Find the right partner who can service the size of district that you have or the size of project that you're trying to do. We talked about RFPs too, but just really making sure that you're sort of weeding out folks that don't seem like the right fit and finding a good partner to work with moving forward. Ricky, you got one or two sentences? I know we're coming up on
also
our time.
On that, look at how you maintain it. There's an initial cost for the monitors, but there's calibrations too. How much do the new sensors cost? Because how often do you have to change them? Look at that long term. Yeah, it could be one unit could be like $200, but if you have hundreds of units, that's a big cost. So consider that to ask those questions on the preventive maintenance part of your monitors too, because that's an added cost.
Yeah, thanks. Catherine, anything you want to share on that?
I think Lori and Ricky said it all. And I think just, maybe find out which vendors have experience in schools. We are a different community. We are a different customer, and that's really important. And you can tell who gets schools and who doesn't, who's committed. And we've been really lucky to feel that commitment and true partnership with our vendor, which is SGS Galson. We've had really good experience with them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing. I know we're starting to run a little bit over. There's so much great information. You have so much experience to share with everyone, and really appreciate you, Catherine, Lori, and Ricky, for taking your time and doing that with us today. For those of you listening, I want to mention just a couple of things so that you can find out how to get more information or participate more with our program. Today's webinar, was really exciting, and also part of a virtual fall summit that we are putting on for program participants. And so if you're interested in getting involved and learning more about the program and how to participate more, we can go to our website and submit an interest form, or take that assessment that I mentioned at the beginning of our webinar and find out what your score is. The Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard in its entirety and the assessment tool are on the website, available for any school to use at any time. And it's a great way to kind of take stock. And if you're interested in learning more and accessing the certification and other events and meetings that we're doing, reach out to us. We would love to talk with you. If you are represent a manufacturer, other business that has offerings that that can support schools in terms of health and sustainability, we want to know you as well. I mentioned that this program is supported by corporate sponsorships, and it's a great way to get connected with schools who are working on all this. Catherine mentioned it earlier, that sort of conversation about like, what do you need and how can we support you schools and really serve all of the children in those schools. I think it's really great to be able to have partners that can engage with us at that level, and really appreciate the group that we have so far, and would welcome more folks to the fold. So with that, I know we ran a couple minutes long, but really appreciate you all listening today. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great afternoon.